Welcome to episode 6 of VR Roundtable. My name is Anthony, and of course, I am joined by Gary. And on this episode, we are going to be very heavy on PlayStation VR. It's going to be a little bit interesting because it's kind of late to the party. You know, I know that finally having my impressions, it's a little bit late to the party, but I've had PlayStation VR now for a handful of days, and I have a ton of stuff to talk about on it. So we're going to get right into some PSVR coverage. Gary, how's everything going anyways over there?
It's pretty good at the moment, yeah. There's a few little bits of news that we'll mention at the end of the show just quickly. But yeah, I'm really interested to hear what about your impressions about PlayStation VR, because obviously you're coming from the HTC Vive. So yeah, be just an interesting discussion.
Yeah, also, I just wanted to mention real quick, we don't have Steve on this episode, but we will look forward to having Steve on some more episodes in the future, and we're also hoping to have a few other guests as well. So keep your eye out for that. But right now, this show will just be me and Gary, and we got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so like I was saying, I'm a little bit late to the party with PlayStation VR, but I finally have it, and it's been fascinating to see how everything has worked out and just kind of going through some ups and downs with it. And there's a lot of positives about PlayStation VR, some that I didn't even expect, but there are plenty of negatives as well. It's not 100% rainbows. So, ultimately, I think, well, I'm not going to spoil it. Let's just get into it. So let's start off real quick with the setup. I actually got my PlayStation VR last Friday, right before we were having our show. In fact, it was when I got home with that PlayStation VR, there was only about an hour and a half until we were going to do our episode, episode 5, where Steve was on. And I get the PlayStation VR and I have it in my room, and I'm thinking to myself, man, do I try to set this thing up before our episode, or should I just leave it in its box and not mess with it? And then after the episode is over, I'll go ahead and set it all up. And I decided, you know what the heck? Let me try to set this thing up. Maybe I can get 20 minutes inside it and have a little brief take on what it was like, you know? So I go through the process of setting it up. And when you get everything out, there's a lot of wires and a lot of little different things that you have to connect. It's a little bit complicated. But the good news is that Sony, what they did was they numbered a lot of the cables. So they have like a little sticker that's on the wire, number 1, number 2, number 3, and they have the different cables numbered. And then they have a quick start guide, which is like this pamphlet that you open up and you kind of take it step by step, and it'll say connect cable 1 to this spot, blah, blah, blah. You know, you just follow it through. And it's pretty easy to put it all together, but there are definitely cables going all over the place. And if you're somebody, I mean, we all know that person out there that has an HD TV, and they think they're getting like great high definition quality, and you go to the back of their TV and they don't even have their HDMI plug plugged in,
Yeah.
you know, and they're using like red, white, and yellow from like the late 90s. And people like that might have a little bit of problem putting this thing together, but if you know the difference between an HDMI cable and like an RF cable, it's not going to be that big of a deal. You just have to take your time. It takes a little while. Bada boom, bada bing, you get the thing set up. However, I will say that one negative that I can say about PlayStation VR in general is if you're into having your gaming setup be super tidy and all together and everything in its place and not having wires kind of going everywhere, it's going to be difficult for you with PlayStation VR because there are a lot of wires that are going in a lot of different directions. And one of the most annoying wires is the processor unit. You have this this processor unit that's connected to your PS4, and you have to connect it via USB to your PlayStation 4. Well, Sony, in their great wisdom, only put USBs on the front of the PlayStation 4. So you actually have to have this ugly wire that's dangling out of the front of your PlayStation 4 that's going to the processor unit. So it's very difficult to make a 100% clean cut installation type situation where everything is kind of set away.
Yeah, just sorry, Anthony. Just quickly, do you know
Yeah.
on the smaller PS4 that's being released just now, if they put any, or even on the Pro, do you know if they've put any USB connections on the back as well at all?
The PS4 Pro does have USB on the back, so you can get PS4 Pro, and you don't have that wire. But the Slim, as far as I'm aware, no, the Slim does not have USB on the back, and a lot of people were like, "What?" They couldn't believe it when the Slim first hit. But the Pro does have USB, so if you do get the Pro, if you want to pay like $400 to hide that cable, it's a great way to do it. So anyway, that's basically the setup. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but it's just if you're that super anal type of person that wants everything super put away, you might have a little bit of struggles with PSVR from how the cables work. Okay. Okay, so now let's get into the actual headset itself. Now, I tried PSVR at Best Buy. This was like many, many months ago, and the thing that really jumped out to me was the comfort. I mean, it just goes on your head, and it's like a soft little pillow that is just cushioning around your head. And then you have the visor that just kind of drops in front of you, and it's just hanging there. It's not even touching your face, and you can move it a little bit closer. And the comfort level is absolutely the real deal. The comfort is there. So that's good, to actually try it at home and actually put it on and get the comfort level. That's good. Now, the downside is that one thing I also mentioned, this was a long time ago when I went to that Best Buy. There is a sweet spot for PSVR, and it is a really tiny sweet spot. Okay. And that very first time, like before our show, I finally got it all hooked up, and I tried Battlezone, and my headset was like totally fogged up. Fogging is a problem. I'll talk about that a little bit. But also the sweet spot, basically what I've learned, and this is something I've learned now that I've had it for 4 or 5 days, is that vertically, you have to either adjust it like millimeters up or millimeters down, and just dial it in to where when you have letters on the screen, especially in the middle of the screen, you look at the word that is in the middle of the screen, and you just focus on that while you kind of move it just up a little. And when you move it up, you'll notice it gets real blurry. You move it down, it gets real blurry, but then you dial it right into the middle and you lock it in. This is a lot harder than I thought, to be honest. You are going to have to learn how to do this. And one of the things I worry about with that a little bit is if you have somebody try it, are they really going to concentrate on making sure, so that is a little bit of an issue. Now, the front adjustment thing that you can zoom in and out, that is super cool. And it is one of the it's one of the best things about PSVR. But there are, it has benefits and it has negatives as well. But being able to zoom that thing out, you can actually look down and find your controller. You can find your move controllers, and you can, maybe find where your remote is for your volume or something like that. You can kind of see down there. So that can be good in a way, but it's bad in a way because you also do have a lot of light leakage, of course. Now, you can push it back towards your face and try to lock it in, but even when you have it locked in at the closest point, there's still quite a bit of light leakage that comes in underneath the bottom.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, actually, when I briefly tried it at that event I told you about. I did notice that even when I pulled it right in, there was still leakage of light coming through sort of the nose section. Similar thing to when I tried the Oculus Rift as well, actually. That was something I noticed with that.
Yeah, and even if you make your room dark, you still have the fact that your headset has all these lights on the front of it, and then you have your DualShock that has a light, and then if you have the Move controllers, those have lights. And so even in a perfectly dark room, you're still going to see just a little bit of something. What I think is eventually somebody might come out with some little third-party thing that kind of snaps onto the bottom of it, and maybe it just floats like this and just blocks everything out, But the fogging, I do need to say there is a little bit more of fogging in PSVR. And one of the reasons I think it does have a little bit more of a fogging issue is because when you put on the Vive, it kind of, it's a seal, it's a seal on your face. And your mouth and your nose, air comes out of your mouth and your nose. And sometimes it's warm air, you're huffing and puffing or whatever. But having it sealed like that with the Vive, that air is not getting up into your actual chamber where your screens are really, but with PSVR, because there is that gap, that a little bit of that gap, you can get a little bit of fogging. But one of the nice things about that slide out thing is you can actually slide it out, and they give you a little tiny cloth, one of those microfiber cloths to clean it. You can actually have it on your head, slide it out, and with one finger, you take the cloth and you leave it on your head, and you can actually clean one of your eyes while it's still on your head, and then close it back up, and then everything's fine. But I have noticed that I've had to kind of clean the lenses a little bit here and there where I didn't have to do it quite as much with the Vive.
Yeah, I do get a little bit of fogging up with the Vive as well because where I use my Vive in my office where I am now, it's in sort of a garage, so it's away from my house. It's usually a little bit cooler, so when I come across, it does take a few minutes before I can get rid of the fogging. So that's a factor as well. But I would have thought with the PlayStation VR having this small gap at the bottom, that would help with fogging to a certain extent. But I guess, like you say, if you've got your breath is sort of leaking into there as well, it can affect it.
Sometimes it does help with the fogging, actually, if you kind of open it up and give it a little bit of air and then the fogging kind of goes away. You know what? It might also be a warming up thing because a lot of times when I'm using PSVR and I notice the fogging, it's kind of right away when I'm using it. So maybe I need to turn on the headset and let it warm for like a couple of minutes. I haven't actually tried that. That could be a possibility. So anyway, one other major thing I need to talk about with the headset is field of view. Okay, so the field of view is not quite to the level of HTC Vive. It's a little bit smaller. I think the Vive is like 110 degrees, somewhere in that range. And I think PlayStation advertises their field of view as like 90 degrees or something like that, somewhere in that kind of ballpark. And then for me, because I have like this modded foam thing where I'm getting my eyes super close to my Vive screen, you know what I mean? I got like 122 degrees of field of view. I'm not even kidding. I swear I'm getting a gigantic field of view. And so when you switch to PSVR, there is a little bit of a noticeable difference. It's kind of hard to get it like super close to your face to like really get in there. And there's no way to mod it. The way it's designed, it's using like rubber and stuff. It's not using like a foam thing. So you can't, it's pretty much, it is what it is. But you can get it pretty close, but field of view is a little bit lower. So that's basically the main things with the headset. But one thing I want to talk about before we get on to the games is the cord that is coming off the headset. And there's a couple of things about the cord that I find a bit peculiar. And I'm not sure exactly what Sony was thinking when they decided to make it this way. I'm sure they had a very logical idea in their head why they did it, but some of it is a little bit head scratching to me coming from the Vive. But anyway, let me grab this headset real quick. Hold on one sec.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so those of you that are listening to the audio only podcast, this is why you might want to check out the YouTube feed every once in a while, because I put things in the camera view and stuff like that to show stuff off. So anyway, here's the PSVR headset, blah, blah, blah. Everybody has seen this before. When you go down the cord, like maybe 2 feet, maybe not even 2 feet, you have a little microphone dongle type thing, like an inline volume control deal. And it has 4 little buttons on it: power for your headset, mute if you're in an online game and you're talking to another player, and then up and down on the volume. So this little inline thing is cool in some ways, especially being able to go up and down in your volume, because sometimes you will start a certain PSVR game and it's way the hell louder than some other game, or one game is quieter or whatever. So you can adjust your volume there and dial that in, and that's kind of nice and convenient. The downside of it, okay, if you look here, I'm going to try to put this up to the camera here. Okay, see how I have my microphone cord coming out of there?
Yep.
Okay, so I have a really short, well, relatively short microphone cord. I tried to get the shortest cord I could to use with my Vive. And on this, because of where this is positioned, it kind of is like on your chest area. If you have it around your back, it's behind your back over there or whatever. But I've found that my headphone cord loves to get tangled up in this thing. And it gets tangled up in such a way where a lot of times my left arm, like my elbow and my arm, gets kind of caught in the wire too. And I have to try to get my arm out of there. And it might just be like a your mileage may vary type thing where it's just my particular headphone cord. Maybe it's just one of these cords that gets tangled in it. I don't know what. But that is a bit of an issue. So, it's kind of a positive and a negative for that. And then the other, well, did you want to say something about that?
No,
at all?
I was just going to say quickly as well, because because you have to really have the headphones plugged into that part of the PlayStation VR in order to get the full 3D sound, because I know a lot of people will probably want to use wireless headphones with it, but it's not really possible to do that to get the proper sound that they require doing it that way. So it's a bit of an odd decision to have that headphone jack there as well.
Yeah, and one other thing too is you see this headset now, you see the band that goes around it, like the halo that goes on your head that makes it so nice and soft. Well, when you have large headphones like I do, like these Sennheisers that have the big ear cups that cup your whole ear, when I try to put it over this, it doesn't quite work. You know what I mean? And so like this doesn't completely seal my ear. So it's almost like you need to get headphones. I don't like earbuds. I just don't like them. So you could have the best earbuds in the world. I'm not interested. So I need to find some type of headphone that works better with PSVR, with like the shape of it and stuff. And so I'm gonna have to.
A lot of people were raising concerns about that when they saw the shape of the PlayStation VR and people using it. They were saying, is it really going to work with over-ear headphones, because you've got that thick band going around that might block some of it. But yeah, I mean, I use earbuds on my Vive just because of the convenience, really. But I'd rather have some sort of very light over-ear headphones, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. And so another thing about this cord that is kind of weird, I'm going to unplug this headphone part. Okay. So your cord, hold on, I got it wrapped up here. So the cord coming off of the headset, one thing that's interesting about it is it's super thin, like super, super thin. And it goes to the inline thing, and it's still very, very thin, super thin. And then you get to this thing right here. Okay. And so from the headset to this is probably like 5 feet, I'm guessing. And it has USB and HDMI that then go to this square plug thing. Okay. And the weird thing about this is that if you're playing a standing game, if you're playing Rush of Blood, if you're playing Job Simulator, if you're playing Batman, if you're playing a stand-up game, this thing here ends up dangling kind of near where your ankle is, or I mean, it depends on how tall you are or whatever. It might be near your shoes or something, but it has a little bit of a weight to it. I mean, not a lot of weight, but enough where it's kind of swinging around and you kind of feel like this little bit of tugging. And I just don't get what Sony was thinking with this because, okay, so then after it connects to this thing, then the wire gets much thicker and it looks like kind of the standard Vive 3-in-1 cable almost. It's a much
Yeah.
thicker wire and it goes like that for like 10 feet or whatever, or 8 feet or something. And then that connects to your breakout box. Okay, hold on. I'm going to put this down real quick.
Yeah, that's a weird decision there to do that as well. It seems like because when you first lifted that up, I thought, is that the breakout box itself? But it did look a lot smaller than from what I've seen. So it's not that, that's just a separate thing.
The breakout box, well, the processing unit is what they call it. And that thing is actually the size of like an old Nintendo Wii almost. It's not that tiny. It actually takes up a little bit of space. But that little breakout, that little mini tiny breakout box thing, see, what I've come to understand is that Sony, the 5-foot cable that has the inline thing and then it has a little USB, you can actually plug that directly into your processing unit and not use the extra 9-foot cord that is thick. And what I realized with this is that let's say you wanted to play PlayStation VR as purely a seated experience and you don't care about standing, you could have that processing unit close enough to where you are where you could just use that one wire and not use that extra wire and you have a really thin wire. And the advantage of this super thin wire is if you're playing a seated game, that junction box, you know, that little mini box that I was telling you about that kind of bangs into your ankle and stuff like that, it's going to be laying on the ground. You know, it's not going to be touching you at all. When you're sitting down, you will not notice that whatsoever. So all you have is that thin wire. And the nice thing about that thin wire is it doesn't tug on your head in any way, shape, or form, where those of us with the HTC Vive, the wire does have a little bit of a tug. You know, there's a little bit of a tug, I think, just because of the weight of it. And this is so much thinner that it has no tug. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a positive there.
Yeah, do you think they've limited the length of that thinner wire? Because it'd be fantastic if you could just get a longer version of that. But I guess there must be some limitations on how far the signal, the required signal, can be sent through only a certain amount of distance of wire that thin. So there must have been some kind of technical limitation for them not to do that.
Or they might have thought that if it was that thin all the way along, that it's easier to break at some point. You know, because if you're
Yeah,
actually walking around with a wire, that, because if you're walking around, and there's not a lot of walking around with PlayStation VR, first off, but if you are, you really kind of have to use that extension thing along with it. I just leave the extension thing plugged in all the time, because you would have to have the processing unit super close to you to completely avoid it, because that cable is only 5 feet. You know, so like if you had a desk situation where you had your chair and you're sitting in your chair and that's your VR spot, you know, and you have your headset on, and then if there was a desk behind you, you could have the processing unit there and then the wire could go to that and it's completely out of the way of everything and you won't feel anything, you know, and that could actually be a cool situation. The downside with that is you're not going to be able to play a stand-up game. You're going to have to switch back to the extension and all that, you know.
yeah, it's yeah, it'd be a good way to do it, because I know one thing, just being a Vive owner, that cable is probably the biggest irritant when you're trying to get immersed in a game or an experience or something like that. So it would be good to have a thinner wire like on the PlayStation VR.
One last thing I want to point out about the headset, and then we'll get to the games, is the wire. So the wire on the headset, this might be kind of hard to see, but the wire is going into the headset compartment basically, and there's no jack that you just unplug it out of. So if your cat or your dog or something were to like bite through this wire, you're kind of boned, you know, because you're going to have to send this whole piece to Sony
Yeah.
So that's kind of disappointing. But one positive thing though, I do want to say a few positive things. The headset is a positive. It's not bad. I'm just trying to point out any little nitpicking thing, but the comfort level is there. And when you're sitting down and you're enjoying an experience, a seated experience, it is like just as good as the HTC Vive and almost better in certain ways. The resolution can sometimes reveal itself, but sometimes it doesn't reveal itself. So it depends on how the developer designs the game to try to maybe hide it a little bit or just does a better job. I don't know.
Yeah, the that was a big thing that I noticed. I mean, I don't know if you have compared Windlands on the PlayStation VR to the HTC Vive. You've probably not if you've bought it on the Vive. But when I tried that again, I've only got limited experience with the PlayStation VR, so this is what I keep going back to the Windlands demo. But that looked every bit as good in the PlayStation VR as it does in the HTC Vive, and that I guess comes down to the, like you say, the game design.
Yeah, so we can go in. Let's just start the games discussion real quick. The games that I've played, all I have is I have the demo disc, and I downloaded Rush of Blood demo, which on the demo disc it's not an actual demo, but they do have the demo in the store. And then I also I have a European account that I made a long time ago to sometimes get demos that were available on the European store that weren't on the American store. And I used my European account to download the demo for Super Hypercube. So I have the Super Hypercube demo, Rush of Blood demo, and then everything that's on the demo disc. And one of the games I'll mention real quick in terms of that direct comparison to the Vive is Job Simulator. There is a demo for Job Simulator. And let me tell you, when you have the Sony headset on and you're playing Job Simulator, the visual difference is non-existent. There is no visual difference,
Oh
which
wow.
is kind of amazing to me when you consider, don't you remember how Job Simulator had those issues with like certain CPUs and like it wouldn't run right and
Yeah, it was one of the games that and Budget Cuts was one of the two games that was having big problems with lower end CPUs. They were getting sort of juttering and things like that with it.
now, on the downside of Job Simulator, of all the games I played, this one actually had the worst of what they call wobble. One thing that some PlayStation VR people will talk about is wobble, where the whole world kind of wobbles a little bit back and forth. And Job Simulator was the worst of that. Although I will say, I have not perfected where to put my camera and all of that stuff. I haven't got quite into that yet. And I haven't played a ton of standing games and tried to really perfect it for standing games. So it's possible that the wobble could have been partly my error from how I have my camera set up. But visually, it is freaking perfect. I mean, like Job Simulator, like I was playing it. Now the thing is, they can't really do the ground, so like in the real Job Simulator you have to go down to the ground and like plug in a power cord down on the ground, for your computer, that part.
Yeah.
And in the PlayStation version they don't even have that. They don't have that part where you have to do that because you don't go to the ground because it's hard for it to cover that whole area.
That was one of my questions, actually. I was going to ask you a little bit later on about this floor tracking with the PlayStation VR, how it gets around that, because something particularly with Job Simulator, now we're talking about that, was when I think it was Colin Moriarty was talking about this, or I was watching a video of the Kind of Funny guys demoing Job Simulator. They were saying that you had to set up the floor level manually and sort of work around that, and that was a little bit different to how we're used to on the Vive. How did you find that, and did that take anything away from the experience?
I don't know that the demo allows you to do that. That might be
Oh,
the
okay.
full version of the game that does that. I was just playing around with it. Honestly, I barely tried that one, to be totally honest with you. I tried it one time. It had that kind of a wobble. I was amazed that the visuals were freaking dead on. I mean, there was no degradation, blah, blah, blah. How do I say that?
Degradation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. There was no watered downness of it. It was perfectly as good as the Vive, which I was like, wow, that is
Yeah.
pretty impressive that it could do that. Um, but I don't want to talk really about that game. There are a ton of demos on PSVR that are fantastic, absolutely amazing. Okay, so Battlezone, I mean, I'll talk about that real quick. I played this at Best Buy, blah, blah, blah. It's the same demo, right? But when you're at home and you're controlling the tank and you're in that little world and it's got the Tron look and the control is smooth, I had absolutely no nausea, no motion sickness or anything. You're looking around your cockpit and you're looking out the windows and stuff. Everything is really cool. Battlezone is awesome. Unfortunately, the demo is really brief. They give you a super brief taste and then boom, it's over. And the game is $60. I'll tell you right now, if Battlezone was 40, I'd own it right now. But at 60, I'm like, I don't
Mm.
know. I signed up for this GameFly thing. So I'm trying to get these games. It's a rental service where you can get 2 games sent in the mail. And this is of course USA only. A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about obviously is like a lot of it is USA only and USA prices and all that. So it's going to be different. But they had this deal where it's like $13.50 a month. You get 2 games at a time. And it's like that for the first 3 months, but then it balloons to a much higher price after that. You know how they do it.
Yeah.
But for me, for 90 days, hey, if I could get some of these VR games, that would be awesome. Unfortunately, all of them are like super low availability. So they haven't sent me anything yet. And I signed up for it like 3 days ago. So I'm still waiting for them to send one single game. But I'm going to try to get Battlezone that way because I just don't know that it's a $60 game. But the demo is fun and it's super short and it's definitely cool. Super Hypercube. This is the one that I got from the European store. Oh my goodness, man. This one is super fun and it's got this retro style to it. It's oozing with like art direction and just it's simple. It's super simple. It's using kind of like a fake vectory graphic look to it, kind of like Asteroids in the Arcade kind of
Yeah.
thing and a little bit psychedelic. Kind of Tempest 2000 a little bit, but it's like this puzzle game. And oh my goodness, man, that game, the sound effects, everything is awesome. The only downside for me, again, I think $30. Okay, $20, bam, I buy it immediately. $30, I'm like, I'm gonna wait a little bit. So that's a lot of these games to me are like $10 too high. A lot of them, I think.
Yeah, that's a lot of what we hear, and even on the Vive on Steam, a lot of the shorter games and experiences, they seem to be a little bit just slightly higher than people are prepared to pay on the whole. But with Super Hypercube, I know a lot of people have been saying how good that game is, the full game. But yeah, for that type of game, it might just be a little bit out of reach for most people, I'd say.
And I can't rent it. It's digital only. So
Oh,
I don't know. I mean, maybe at a certain point I'll just say F it and I'll pay the $30 for it. It to me, it's like one of these games that is not like a huge game. It's super focused on what it's trying to do, as this VR puzzle game. And it's not like you're going to see like dramatically different things later in the game. It's just you're keep progressing farther and farther and it gets harder and harder. But for $30, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm kind of spoiled coming from the Vive where there's tons of $15, $10, $7 stuff. So it's a little bit different when you get into console world.
yeah.
Um, One demo I got to talk about real quick, Kitchen. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is the Resident Evil thing, although I don't know if it's going to have anything to do with Resident Evil 7 because this was made a long time ago. It was one of the first demos that people were showing for Morpheus back in the beginning. Dude, this demo, let me tell you right now, okay, spoilers for this demo. If you're getting PSVR in the near future, go ahead and fast forward maybe like 3 or 4 minutes because I got to talk about a little bit of what happens in this demo because from a VR standpoint, this was one of the moments where I was like, oh shit, this is a difference. There's a
Yeah.
difference that's going on here with PSVR. And so you start off in this demo and you're in this kitchen, obviously, and you're sitting on a chair and you're basically kind of tied to the chair and your hands are bound. So you're holding the controller. So it has your arms on the controller like that. You see a guy over there on the ground. He's not moving. There's a camera that's aimed right at you. And the way you start off the demo is you take your hands and, damn it. You take your hands and you punch the camera and you knock the camera over and it lands over by the guy that's laying on the ground. And so he kind of wakes up and he's like falling all over and barely waking up and stuff. And then he grabs this knife and you don't know what he's going to do with the knife. And then he comes all up real close to you. But then you realize in the story, like, he's your friend. And he's like, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. And he's like, hold up your arms. So you like hold up your arms like this and he's going to try to cut, in between your arms.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in VR, you actually feel almost a little bit like, don't cut my hand, make sure you get it in between there because the knife is straight 3D. It looks real as can be. So this guy is like cutting through your thing, but you notice out of the corner of your eye, something like, runs by and then something's over there. And then you see like this freaky lady and she comes up behind the dude and just jacks him with a knife, like right through his freaking chest. And it's like, you're sitting there and you're witnessing the whole thing. And then, so this guy, she grabs the guy and takes him away. And she stabs you in your leg, and you're looking down at your leg. And I guess I should have been terrified by this whole thing, but I was so enthralled by the human characters that were so close to me and their movements were so good. This is high-end production value. These are not amateurs. The professionals have arrived and they are going to now take over. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, these are some high quality characters that are coming at you. The lady comes back, and this was the best part of the whole thing. The lady comes back and she is like zombie lady practically. Okay. Her skin is like a different color. It's like almost like a rotting, like almost translucent. And you look at her skin and her hair is all stringy and greasy and wet and it's all up in your face. And she has a knife in her hand, right? And she gets up in your face and then she leans back and then she goes back in your face like real close. And it's like, the hair is like almost in your face and you move back naturally because she's like invading your space. And it's freaking incredible, dude. I can't even say.
No, this is one thing that I've mentioned before about the thing that we're missing on the Vive is the fact that you see all these great character models on PlayStation VR and they've got all these big AAA developers that are making all these custom assets, all these custom models. And this is something we really don't see too much of on the Vive. And I think it makes a really big difference to just in general the experiences, because the short ones where we have seen it in the gallery, there's a well-modeled character in that who talks to you. And it really does make a difference to that story. But this demo in particular, this is one thing I really do want to try because so many people have spoken about this demo. And for a long time, you couldn't really see any clips of it on YouTube. They were so secretive about this demo, all the events and everything. They wouldn't show anybody or let anybody film what was going on. So this is one I'd definitely like to try, and it does sound really good.
From a graphic standpoint, I do have to clarify that the graphics that I was impressed with when it comes to this is the humans, the human characters and their movements and when they get close to you and that. The kitchen is kind of PlayStation 2-ish, like the table and the floor and pots and pans and stuff. It's almost PlayStation 2 level or like really crappy PlayStation 3 level or somewhere in between there. But those characters, when they come really close to you, especially the lady, when she gets all up in your face, I mean, I'm just in awe of it. I mean, I'm not even scared and freaking out because I'm like, wow, look at this VR because the knife is coming right at my, oh, wow. That was
Yeah,
crazy.
that's one I definitely want to try as well. Yeah, that's yeah.
Another one I want to talk about because this is on the negative side, and actually, this isn't really very negative either. What happened afterward is negative, but experiencing it was actually awesome. Drive Club. We've heard all about Drive Club, right? You know, about how the graphics are terrible and, you know, the mixed reviews and all this stuff. So there is a demo for Drive Club, and I started that up. And I think there's two parts to the demo. One of them is like a time trial, and then I don't know what the other part is, but I went into the time trial. And so I selected the time trial, and you're just kind of driving around this track. You pick out a car, and you kind of have to pick how high you are in the car and how close you are to the steering wheel and stuff like that. And so the car that I picked was it was like a convertible. So it's like open air, you know. So I didn't have like a roof and all this stuff. And I'm driving around this track, and the graphics are PlayStation 2 straight up graphics. Okay, the graphics are not amazing. In fact, in some ways, I'm driving around this track, and I'm like, this is almost like 3DS style graphics. You
Oh
know how
no.
blocky everything is. You know, but the sensation of it was awesome, and there were like leaves and things that were on the road, and you drive over the leaves, and you know you kick the leaves up, or a car ahead of you or something like that, and the leaves are blowing around, and it's completely 3D, and you turn over here and you turn over there, and it's smooth. And oh dude, I was like giggling as I was playing this, and it was like lap after lap after lap. I was doing like 6 laps. I was like, when is this thing ever going to stop? um but as I was going through, I was like, this is a game changer. This is a game changer. Seeing leaves and stuff blow around like you're really in this world. Okay, after it was over, headache city, man.
Oh
Headache city.
really?
I felt terrible for like 4 hours after this, like
Oh
no
no.
joke.
Oh no, no. I know some people. Well, a lot of people are saying that actually about this game. Did you play with just a gamepad, just the DualShock gamepad, or
Yeah, I don't have a steering wheel or anything like that. It's just a regular gamepad, and I haven't tried it again because I'm scared. Because it's like I suffered for like 4 hours after this, like just not feeling good at all, just straight headache and just like
oh
just
no? Is
yeah. So
is this the first time you've sort of felt like that to this extent in VR? Or
I tried that Live for Speed, that other racing thing, and when I crashed into walls and stuff, I had to quit out of that. And I got the same kind of feeling. But see, I was playing Drive Club for a long time. I was going laps and laps and laps, and I was enjoying the hell out of it. It didn't hurt me when I was using it, but I decided to stop. And then that's when I noticed, like, oh, I do not feel right.
yeah,
So,
I have played a few driving games on the HTC Vive, and I've got on. I mean, when I first started playing them, they did make me feel a little bit odd, but only while I was playing. I didn't really experience any motion sickness afterwards or anything like that. And maybe I don't know, because I do play them in short bursts, maybe for at most maybe half an hour at a time, something like that. So maybe it was something to do with that. I'm not sure.
okay, let me just get into a couple quick games before we get it. If I don't know if we'll have time for the news or not, but there's just a couple more games I got to talk about real quick because, dude, I will tell you straight up, this launch lineup, it doesn't have one game that just blows everything out of the water, but it has so many good quality games. Super Hypercube, Battlezone, Rigs. I haven't even talked about Rigs yet. Rush of Blood is pretty freaking fun and enjoyable. Kitchen is just a demo, but it's amazing to check it out. But there's a lot of good stuff. Thumper. I got to tell you about Thumper, man. Okay, so Thumper, when I tried this demo, one thing is Thumper has been described as like a violent rhythm game or something like that, or a rhythm game with violence or some
Yeah,
kind of crazy term like that. And when you first hear that, you're like, what? Like, I don't get that. Like, what are you talking about? But when you get in and you play this game, you're basically, when you start it, you're like right behind this little silver beetle that's going along a track. And as the track goes along, there's little things that come along the track where you got to time it and hit the X button like at the right time. And there's kind of like a music thing going on, and you kind of get a feel for, okay, boom, boom, okay, boom, boom, you kind of figure it out. Okay, but then you get to these parts in the track where the track's going straight, but then all of a sudden it goes that way. And when you get to the part where it turns, what you have to do is you have to hit X and then hit your stick to the left if you're going left, or hit the stick to the right. And through the entire turn, you have to hold the stick and you have to be hitting X. And the amazing thing about it is you're flying at incredible speeds. And when you hit these turns, it's like wham, and then it's like wham the other way. And when they talk about the violence, that's the violence. Have you ever been on one of those roller coasters where, not like a super high-end roller coaster, but like a roller coaster at kind of like a crappy carnival or something, and they have some of these roller coasters where they like slam you all over the damn place and you almost have bruises?
Yeah.
That's what Thumper, when you're playing it, you don't actually get bruises, but you almost feel like you should be with the force of it and the music and the psychedelic. It is one of these games, dude. If I was like into hallucinogenics or something, you would get lost in this thing. It's like a whole nother world. And then with the music and everything, Thumper is $20. And I can tell you that this is a game I will probably buy in the very near future. It's digital only, and it's freaking awesome. I'm really loving Thumper.
Yeah, this is another one where I've heard quite a lot about it, and a lot of people are mentioning this game. So, to be honest, I'm not really that into rhythm type games in general, but who knows? If I was to try it in VR, it might be a different experience. But
it's kind of like Wipeout. You're on a track and you're kind of driving along and stuff. That there's a little bit of Wipeout, a little bit of Tron, but it's also a music rhythm game. It's a weird thing to describe, but you battle these bosses and it's just incredibly, like, so much stuff is going on, dude. It's an audio visual feast. All these PlayStation VR games, if I were just to boil it down into a couple of words, it's like polish, production values, it's expertise, it's knowing when to make little things jingle here and little things jingle there and things flying all around. And they know what they're doing, man. Okay, the last demo I'll talk about real quick, because I know we're running long here, but the last demo that I saved the best for last, Playroom VR Robots Rescue. Incredible. Incredible. Like, straight up, like, this is the showstopper. You play this little 15-minute platformer, okay? It single-handedly justifies PlayStation VR, period, dot. Okay? You put this thing on, dude. Japan Studios knocked it out of the park. Knocked it out of the park. It only lasts for like 15 minutes. And some people are like, well, it's just a platformer, Oh my God, dude, there's so many details, so many little things, just the sound, the cuteness of the robots, saving them. And then when you save them and he kicks them up in the air and they fly into your controller. Oh my goodness, man. It is incredible.
yeah, this is one that I've heard a fair bit about as well. People have mentioned this just as a small section of Playroom VR, but there was an article on, I think it was Upload VR, just a few days ago, where they were talking about how this would be a fantastic full game. If they were to make this into a full game, this would be one of the best VR experiences on PlayStation VR. So yeah, I'm really eager to try this one as well, because I know you're a fan of Lucky's Tale, and that's really one of the only, I've played Lucky's Tale on the Vive as a platformer, and Adventure Time, my kids wanted me to download Adventure Time, and I've played through that, and that's pretty good as well. So I think platformers do have a place in VR, definitely.
You know what's magical about this compared to Lucky's Tale? Okay, so Lucky's Tale, you're controlling this little 3D character, right? And you're inside that world, but you're kind of like a ghost that's viewing it from the outside, and you're controlling this little character and you're moving him around. And all of that is awesome. And the world is awesome. It's beautiful. It's colorful. It's like a magical Mario land that you're inside of. And you see streams and stars in the sky and all blah, blah, blah. The difference between that and Robots Rescue is in Robots Rescue, you are in the game. Like you're in the game. Okay, so you control this little robot, but you know your DualShock 4 controller. When you start up the game, it shows a DualShock 4 and it says, take your DualShock 4 and put it in here. And when you put it in there, it's like ching, and it's like rumbles and it's like locked in, right? And then the controller is now in the game,
Oh,
like really in the game. And so the crazy thing is you're controlling this little robot guy as he's getting all the little coins and everything and jumping around and saving his little robot guys. And when he saves another little robot guy, a lot of times he'll kick him and the robot flies up in the air and he falls right into your little controller. And you know the little thumb thing on the DualShock that you slide?
yeah.
That opens up and you see the little guys in there. And when you save one robot, there's one. When you save two, there's two. Okay, now there's 5 of them in there. And it's so cute. I mean, it is cuteness to the 12th degree. If you don't smile and laugh and giggle as you're playing this game, you're not human. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna, because it's difficult. A lot of these demos that PlayStation VR give that are available everywhere, they don't really do a demo of Playroom VR that I've seen anywhere. So yeah, I think as soon as I get the opportunity to try it, I'm gonna definitely jump into that one.
Yeah, there's got to be somebody in your city with a PlayStation VR. Eventually, when this show gets maybe a little bit more popular, maybe somebody will know you and they'll be like, "Hey, man, I'll give you a, come
Yeah,
over. You can play this thing for 3 hours or whatever."
yeah.
But
I'm trying to get my son to ask for one for Christmas, but he's just not doing it. He's not complying at all.
yeah, well, I mean, you don't have to force it or nothing, but um, just overall, man, I think. I mean, there's a lot of games I haven't even talked about. And maybe on some future episodes we can talk about some of the other ones. But just overall, the real difference. One thing I will say though is going back to the overall thing. PlayStation VR from a seated perspective is incredible. Most of the games that I'm talking about, like Thumper, Super Hypercube, Battlezone, Riggs, Kitchen, Res Infinite, Drive Club, all of these are seated games. The seated experiences are awesome. And PSVR doesn't have a problem with tracking when you're sitting down and even Thumper or not Thumper, Tumble VR, where you're moving the blocks around and you use one move controller, that works absolutely great. So the tracking when you're sitting down, it works. I'm having no problems. Giant Bomb, I don't know what happened with them, but I'm having no problems. Everything's working great. My headset's working great. The tracking's working great. The sit down games are incredible. They have production value, they have polish, they have audio. These are professionals that are working and they have money and they have experience, and we're seeing that. And it's kind of amateur hour a little bit on the HTC Vive. I mean, I don't know, I don't want to diss it. HTC Vive's got great games, incredible games, Vanishing Realms. PlayStation VR is not going to do room scale. That's not going to happen. So it can't compete on that level. Stand-up games, I haven't had enough experience with the stand-up games to really make a comment on it. But from a sit-down perspective, PSVR is right there. And wow, this is
Yeah.
cool, man. I'm glad that this is as good as it is.
Yeah, I guess it sort of highlights the difference that we've seen for years and years, the difference between sort of console gaming and PC gaming as well. So you've got this piece of hardware that the developers can design specifically for, and it's there. They know they can test it out to the nth degree in their studios. They know exactly how it's going to run on everybody's system, and they can hone it for that. With PC-based systems, as we've seen, it can sometimes cause problems having all these different types of hardware. And again, if they're developing for trying to get to all the VR headsets out there on the PC, so you've got the Oculus, which at the moment is sort of gamepad based games, and then you've got the HTC Vive, which is really room scale is the attraction for that one. And developers are sort of caught in the middle, trying to develop as much as they can for both headsets to get the market, but at the same time they can only do so much. So it's a difference, but I think it will get better with time, and we'll see developers coming over and hopefully putting the amount of effort we really crave on the Vive and the Oculus, and seeing it better experiences like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get professionals working on the Vive. I mean, you look at stuff at like Raw Data, Serious Sam, when we get Fallout 4 VR next year, and then of course all the lab and all that. But console gaming, I mean, there is something about mass market. When you get the mass market, you get the publishers and all that. One thing that Steve said last week, he made a really good point where he said that the positives and the negatives of like the Vive and the PlayStation VR, it's like yin and yang. You know what I mean? It's a great combination. It really, I mean, it's expensive to try to do the whole thing, no question about it, but it's an amazing combination right now. It's like if I want a seated experience, it's all about PSVR. And if I want room scale and be able to walk around a volumetric cube, it's all about the Vive.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you want to just carry on for another 10 minutes and just quickly mention a couple of news stories that have come out over the past few days.
Yeah, we could do that. I definitely want to talk about the big one. What's the big one?
Yeah, the Windows 10, the Microsoft have revealed some partners that they're working with to develop a new VR headset starting at $299, and it's got inside out tracking as well. So it's still tethered to a PC. But one thing they did mention during the presentation, they did say that, I mean, they were sort of dissing a little bit the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift, saying these less immersive experiences and all this kind of thing. But yeah, it's still tethered to the PC, but they were saying that the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive require expensive high-end PCs. So I don't know if they're sort of somehow suggesting that theirs will work on a lower-end PC, but it's still tethered. But the fact that it's got inside-out tracking is a big thing. People are saying it's got this sort of long tether, so what's the point in inside-out tracking? I still think there is a big point to it, because when you've got inside out tracking with the HTC Vive, you have to put up the lighthouse system, and a lot of people, it seems to put a lot of people off. I don't think it's a big deal for me personally, but it's something extra that you have to do. So if you've got that ability to just plug the headset into the PC and you're away, then it can be a big thing. But that was the thing that stood out to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the inside out thing is interesting because a lot of people say, well, VR is not going to be big because you got to dedicate a room to it. You know, you got to dedicate a room, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, inside out tracking, technically, you could take it into any room, turn around and look at the whole room a couple of times. It freaking analyzes it, and bada boom, bada bing, you're done. You know, and if that really works like that, and I don't know, the 299 thing and it being tethered, and it's cool that they're working with all these different companies, HP, Dell. I mean, these are some big names. And honestly, some people might be scared of the fact that we got new headsets coming in, like, oh my God, what does this do to my Vive investment? Has my Vive investment been a disaster? You know, but we can't worry about all this. You got to just let it happen. There's going to be a lot of competition. It's going to get really crazy. There's going to be a lot of things coming out, and we just kind of have to go with the flow and just hope for the best. But I mean, the good thing about competition is it weeds out the bad shit, you know, and it focuses in on the good stuff, and everything just keeps getting better and better, and it gets cheaper and cheaper. And at least, hey, if Microsoft is really going to jump in this thing in a major way with their whole Windows holographic and all that, that's great, because we really want to push this. You know, let's push this. Let's make sure. I'm glad, dude, that another story we have is PlayStation VR sold out on Amazon here in the USA. If PlayStation VR becomes this hot Christmas gift, which it might become, at first I didn't think that was going to happen. Like you asked me 2 shows ago, I didn't think that was going to happen. But maybe, I mean, after I've played all the demo disc and all those great games, it could be a pretty hot gift. And then Microsoft with all these other companies, VR, it might be gaining some nice momentum going forward with all this.
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying there as well. With this generation of VR, you can't really. It's the first generation, and people are worried about all these new headsets coming out. So theirs isn't necessarily going to be the best or the cheapest, or you can't worry about those kind of things at the moment. You've just got to let it go and see what happens, because they're in team. Microsoft are in team with Asus and Acer, and Acer are actually big into VR for a while now as well. They've teamed up with Starbreeze doing this Star VR system, which has got the really wide field of view. So that's all exciting stuff. And like I say, with the popularity of the PlayStation VR at the moment, GameStop are actually saying it's exceeded expectations, and they're ordering new stock in before the holidays. So this is all fantastic news. Having Microsoft now really pushing VR in a big way, because they've had their HoloLens, which is a AR type headset, for a while, but it's too expensive at the moment. And if they're really pushing into this section of VR, it can only be good on the whole. And the chances are now, I mean, you've got Microsoft, you've got Facebook, you've got Google, all going into VR. We really need Apple, as much as people are going to cringe at me saying that. If we can get Apple involved in VR as well, it's really not going to have a chance of failing, once we've got all these big companies involved.
Yeah, I mean, all the major companies, it's like they have to at least dip their toes in these waters. You know what I mean? Because nobody wants to be caught like 5 years from now, like, oh, we didn't believe VR was going to be a thing. And now we're on the outside looking in. So everybody wants a little bit of a piece of this action. And all these big companies, they have to have some kind of play. They have to be thinking, I think also companies like Samsung, Intel, there could be more disruptive stuff that could come down the line where people are working on stuff in their labs that could be blown. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be super crazy, but it's an exciting time. It's a little scary because we are making investments in this stuff. But as long as there's good games and good experiences, just enjoy what you have and don't worry too much about the future, and just know that there's going to be future stuff that's going to be great, and it's just going to be awesome. So hopefully we'll just stay alive long enough to be able to see all this crazy stuff, man, because I'm telling you, it's going to be crazy. Magic Leap with that crazy new wraparound headset that they got, the prototype that they showed. So it's exciting times in VR, man, and I'm loving this. PlayStation VR is awesome. I still love my Vive. I'm not like switching teams or anything here. It's all good, that's all you can really say.
Yeah, it's all good for VR. And just one very last thing I want to mention, because it was quite big news with the Vive people this week, was the asynchronous reprojection was released in the latest SteamVR beta update. So I've only had a very quick chance to try this. I downloaded a couple of new games. One was called Your VR a few days ago, and I'll talk more about that in the next show. But one thing about that game that I will mention is that the performance wasn't particularly great when I went through that. So I thought that would be a good game to try with this asynchronous reprojection. And I went in, and it does make a big difference. Just if you're standing in one position and you just turn your head, there'll be absolutely no juddering now. Whereas before in that game, I did notice that there was some without this, just with standard reprojection in place. So it does make a big difference to that. One thing I did notice is this is something that it doesn't affect at the moment, is the fact that the hand models, which are obviously on your controllers, they do have the same blurring effect that we're sort of used to with reprojection. I need to experiment a little bit more with this asynchronous reprojection, because there's a few more little options within the settings of SteamVR now. So you can either have the new asynchronous reprojection selected and the old interleaved reprojection, or you can do combinations of either or, and they can give different results depending on the game. So it's all things that I need to experiment with. I don't know if you've tried it at all.
No, since getting PSVR, I have not used my Vive, because I'm using PSVR in the same room right now temporarily, and so it's taken up too much space, and I'd have to get rid of the whole thing to be able to go back to Vive right now. So I'm kind of focusing on that. But the game that I would love to try with that is Cyberpong. because I knew there were times in Cyberpunk where you're juggling like 10 different balls and you're hitting these blocks and all that stuff, and it would get really choppy and stuff during some of those parts, and I wonder if that would smooth out. Does it run like constantly, or does it just kick in when it needs it?
It just it just kicks in when it needs it. But the thing is, I think the best way to use it is to still, because Valve is still sort of constantly pushing the fact that they want to still aim for 90 frames per second, and this can be used as some kind of safety net, which I think is the best way to use it. Really, you don't want to use it constantly, especially with this iteration, because it's only focusing on helping out with your rotational head movement. So if you were to move around, especially in room scale, we see this, where if you were to walk around the room quite quickly, then it won't help with that. You'll still see a lot of juddering. But if you're stood in place and you're just turning your head, then you won't see anything. Everything will be perfectly smooth. So it depends on the circumstances. But I think Valve are working on another update to bring it closer to what we're seeing on Oculus and asynchronous space warp, which does help with positional movement of the HMD as well. And it's all interesting stuff. I'm still keeping, because I've seen a lot of people on Reddit sort of ramping up their super sampling to get a clearer picture and relying more on this asynchronous reprojection, which is fine if it works for them. I just still think it's probably best just to use it as a safety net when you need it at this stage, because it affects other things at the moment, like I say, the hand controllers and things like that. You still see sort of blurring, and it's not crisp anymore with those. So until we get to that point, I think it's still best to aim for 90 frames per second if you can.
Yeah, I'm glad they got it. I hope to try it soon, and we'll have to see how it works out.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, so I think we're about ready to end it there, if you're happy to do that.
Yeah, that'll do the show for this week. This was episode 6. Once again, if you guys can leave a comment for us on the YouTube page, go ahead and comment on the video. Or if you want, if you're listening to the podcast only feed, we do need to get a few reviews. We don't have very many reviews up there. The more reviews you get, more people get to find out about the show, et cetera, et cetera. So we're hoping for that. But anyway, guys, thanks for listening to the show or watching the show on YouTube, either way. And we'll definitely have a show for you guys next week. See you guys then.
Cheers. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.